Have you ever had a conversation with someone everything felt great? The connection, the eye contact, even the laughter. But just a few days later, they turned cold, distant, and almost disappeared? You're left wondering, did I do something wrong? But the truth is, you didn't. You were just trying to get close to an avoidantly attached person, someone who, the more intimacy they feel, the more they instinctively want to pull away. And the more you try, the more you show love, the more you prove your worth, the further they retreat. That's why today, I want to share with you how to attract an avoidant without trying, without performing, and without losing yourself. This isn't a video about manipulation, it's a guide to emotional clarity, a roadmap for connecting with avoidance without abandoning your own sense of self. You'll learn why avoidants pull away the moment things feel close, how to become magnetic to them without pressure, without games, and most importantly, how to stay rooted in your self-worth in a confusing, inconsistent dynamic. If you've ever been stuck in a situationship, if you've ever felt heartbroken by someone's silence or chased after someone who only seemed to fade away, this video is for you. Make sure to subscribe and watch till the very end, because at the end of this video, I'll reveal the core truth. What truly touches the heart of an avoidant without triggering their fear of closeness? We often misunderstand avoidantly attached people. Many assume they're afraid of love, emotionally unavailable, or incapable of connection, but the truth is more nuanced. Avoidants do feel deeply sometimes, even more than others, but they don't believe they can love and stay whole at the same time. To them, closeness feels like a threat of being consumed, controlled, dependent, and worst of all, vulnerable with no escape. So anyone trying to impress, pull them closer, or read them too well will immediately trigger their withdrawal. Not because they're cold, but because they're trying to protect the last space where they still feel in control. Avoidants don't run from love. They run from expectation to open up, to reciprocate, to move faster than they're ready. What they truly long for is to exist in a relationship without feeling like they're disappearing into it. This is where the concept of the invisible magnet becomes not just attractive but healing. It's not a tactic, but a state of presence, calm, grounded, without neediness or force. Someone who shows up but doesn't perform. Like the sun doesn't beg the planets to orbit, it simply shines. And that steady radiance draws others in, not because it asks, but because it allows. Avoidants don't want you to chase. They want to know you can shine without pulling them into orbit. They seek freedom, but within connection. And that's what the invisible magnet offers. The ability to stand in your own worth, without demanding reassurance, without urgency, without fear. You offer space and let them come closer, only if they want to. That's the attraction of stillness. You don't bend, but you're not closed. You're open, but not exposed. You invite without grabbing. With avoidance, what makes them open up isn't promises, or intensity, or even affection. It's the experience of not being invaded emotionally. When they realize you're not trying to figure them out or pull them out of their shell, they begin to watch you more closely. They notice how you respond to their silence. Whether you panic when they don't reply right away, whether you cling or stay calm. And that quiet steadiness in you is what sparks their curiosity. You don't have to say much. You just have to not collapse into insecurity. Avoidants often observe from afar. They want to know, do you need them to feel okay? If yes, they'll step back. But if you remain grounded, respecting space, showing up without pressure, they begin to step closer. Because when they feel that you're not trying to trap them in a love story, they start wanting to write that story with you. Here's the paradox. Avoidants don't actually hate intimacy. They just fear losing control inside it. And the more freedom they feel in your presence, the more they want to stay. A true invisible magnet never demands a place in someone's life, but it still draws people in because it lets them walk away and still want to return. Not because they were manipulated, but because they felt safe. Safety isn't someone always telling you they love you. It's someone being there without needing to say anything, but you know you're not being judged, not being pressured, and not needing to pretend to be stronger than you are. To an avoidant, that kind of safety is rare and priceless. Many people believe that the way to attract someone is by creating emotional dissonance. Give, then pull back. Be warm, then cold. Keep them confused, so they'll chase clarity. But with avoidant individuals, This tactic doesn't create attraction. It activates defense. When an avoidant feels emotional confusion, they don't try to resolve it, they retreat. Silently, without explanation, without coming back. The problem isn't closeness itself. The real issue lies in pace and perceived intent. Avoidants have a highly sensitive radar for anything that feels like pressure to connect quickly, to open up on demand, to respond emotionally within someone else's timeline. When they sense someone moving faster than their internal comfort allows, they automatically raise emotional walls. Not because they're heartless, but because they're trying to protect their internal sovereignty, the one thing that helps them feel safe in a world filled with emotional expectations. That's why, instead of creating contradictions to pull them in, a far more effective approach is to create spaciousness within the connection. Room for them to observe you. Room for them to feel themselves while being near you. Room where they don't have to perform emotionally or respond before they're ready. When you don't name their feelings, don't overanalyze their silence, and don't demand clarity too soon, they begin to feel safe. And within that safety, they begin to want to understand you. The most compelling game for an avoidant is when you're not playing any game at all. You're not being ambiguous to spark curiosity. You're simply present not to manipulate, but to connect. You're honest, but not imposing. You care, but you're not trying to control or shape the experience. Avoidant individuals don't want to be yanked out of their inner world. They want the freedom to step out on their own into a space that doesn't threaten their autonomy. And if they feel that you're someone who won't invade that process, who isn't in a rush to decode or define them, you become a rare kind of emotional safety. Not because you're mysterious, but because you carry boundaries, and you don't weaponize emotion to force closeness. Here's the paradox. The more freedom you give an avoidant to have their own experience around you, the more they want to stay in it. They begin to observe you in silence. They remember the words you didn't dramatize. They replay the moments when you weren't trying to stand out, and they start coming back. Not because you convinced them, but because they chose to. You don't have to send mixed signals. You only have to be gently consistent. You don't need to suppress your feelings, but don't make them heavy either. Let your presence say, if today you need distance, that's okay. If tomorrow you want to be closer, that's okay too. I'm not measuring our connection by how quickly you move. I'm here because I want to be, not because I need you to behave a certain way. Avoidants don't trust grand declarations. They trust steady presence over time. And if you're the only person who hasn't rushed them into a role, hasn't tried to force a label, hasn't used closeness as a condition, then you might become the only person they feel safe enough to truly open up to. Because they don't fall for pressure, they soften through permission, through consistency, through the quiet, knowing that you're not chasing them, not fixing them, not making their openness a prize, but simply offering them the space to feel safe in your presence. And slowly, they return, not because they have to, but because they finally want to. One of the things that makes avoidants feel most unsafe in a connection is the sense of being led emotionally without their consent. They are highly sensitive to emotional manipulation, even the subtlest kind. Phrases that seem casual or sweet, if they carry hidden intent to shape their reactions, will be detected instantly. To them, that feels like a psychological intrusion, and their natural response is retreat to preserve emotional sovereignty. They don't need you to lead them anywhere. They need you to create space for them to arrive on their own. That's why what works with avoidance always begins with neutral observation, not implicit expectation. Instead of saying, I'm sure you feel this connection too, right? Try something like, some conversations feel so real, people need quiet time afterward to let it sink in. Is that true for you? Rather than asking for emotional confirmation, let your words offer them freedom to choose what they feel, with no pressure to match your experience. This kind of connection doesn't rush. It's like placing a mirror gently in front of them and stepping back, allowing them to look only if and when they're ready. You don't explain, you don't analyze, you don't assign meaning. You simply describe reality and let them decide if it means anything to them. The most effective invitation comes from stillness, from a place inside you that doesn't need anything from them except to be real. And that absence of demand becomes the safest thing for an avoidant to lean into. They feel seen but not pressured, welcomed but not expected to perform. Avoidants don't resist intimacy itself. They resist being swept into someone else's emotional world before they've had time to understand their own. So every gesture from you needs to come at a slow, respectful rhythm. When you say, "I don't know what this means for you, for me, it just feels calm," you're sharing, not suggesting. You're offering truth, not steering the outcome. And when they choose to respond, it becomes a voluntary moment of connection, not a conditioned behavior. That is what creates emotional bonds that last. For them, invitation doesn't mean instant engagement. It's like planting a seed and then respecting the silence that follows, letting them return only when it feels right. And if they do come back, nothing is more meaningful than that, because it's not the result of influence, but of inner alignment. In a world where everyone's trying to lead others emotionally, not leading becomes a power of its own. When you let avoidants choose their experience and define their own emotional truth, you're honoring the deepest boundary they have, and that's the only place they'll ever open from, fully and freely. Avoidant individuals don't distance themselves because they lack the desire to connect. They distance because, in the past, someone tried to define their emotional experience for them, and that made them feel like they lost ownership over their own inner world. It might have been a partner who constantly demanded clarity, a family who didn't allow emotional privacy, or a culture that pressured them to open up on cue. That experience left them with a deep lesson. If I don't stay in control of my emotions, I'll be swept away. So what makes an avoidant feel safe isn't you figuring them out or knowing what they feel before they say it. It's when you show them that you don't need to understand them right away. You don't rush to interpret every behavior. You don't scan every moment for meaning. You give them time. You let them sit with unnamed emotions. And most importantly, you don't force them to turn feelings into words before they're ready. Because attraction for the avoidant doesn't come from dialogue. It comes from the respect for silence. It's when you don't ask, "What are we?" but instead say, "I'm not sure what you need right now, but I'm here if you want to talk." The difference is subtle, but profound. One invites a performance. The other offers permission. In relationship with an avoidant, the most respectful thing you can do is not write the ending too soon. Let whatever they're feeling stay unspoken for a while, until they choose to name it. When you say something like, "Look at you choosing to stay," you may think you're being attentive. But for an avoidant, that might feel like emotional labeling, something they've spent their life protecting themselves from. On the other hand, when you stay present, and you don't react excessively to their closeness or distance, you're sending a quiet but powerful message. You are allowed to have your experience, without being analyzed. That's when they begin to try something new. If I can be here and not feel trapped, maybe I actually want to stay. And then something beautiful happens. They begin telling their story, not in words, but through presence, through small returns, without a reason, through quiet gestures of interest and openness. They won't say, "I'm opening up," but they'll ask how your day was. They'll linger after a conversation. They'll share something they've never told anyone before. And that's their way of saying, "I trust you," without needing to say it out loud. You don't need to decode the avoidant. You only need to not steal the chance for them to decode themselves. Because in the end, everyone wants to be understood. But the avoidant needs to know, "I can arrive at you in my own time, in my own words, without being pulled halfway there." If you've ever fallen for an avoidant person, you've probably experienced a strange kind of closeness, one that feels near, yet always just out of reach. Sometimes, they're warm, unexpectedly deep, and present. But the moment you try to move closer, they pull away, as if they're escaping the very connection they helped create. It leaves you confused, and wondering more than once, what's the right thing to do? The answer isn't to do more, it's to do less, but with more clarity. According to attachment theory, avoidant individuals don't respond well to emotional pressure. They often grow up in environments where closeness meant losing control, being judged, or having to meet others' emotional needs before their own. Research by Mikulincer and Shaver, 2007, shows that avoidants develop deactivating strategies. They downplay their attachment needs when emotional closeness feels invasive. So all efforts to impress them, pursue them, or prompt emotional responses often backfire. You don't need them to respond on your timeline. What you need is to create an experience that feels spacious, but meaningful enough to stay in their memory. That experience isn't built through emotional fireworks, but through stability, non-invasiveness, and your ability to stay grounded, even when they pull away. You don't need to prove your worth. You need to show up as someone who already knows their worth and doesn't need it confirmed. In that stillness, you don't become the chaser, you become the one they can return to when they're ready. Avoid emotional baiting. Avoidants don't respond to drama. They respond to freedom, not the kind that lets them leave, but the kind that lets them feel without being managed. Let them keep the right to tell their own story at their own pace. Don't label everything they do. You don't need to say, "I know you're opening up." Just stay present. Don't intrude. Let them discover that truth themselves. You don't need to accelerate things. Every time you push the pace, you lose ground. Avoidants trust those who don't rush, because if you can wait, they know your connection is real, not just a need to fill space. If there were a formula to attract an avoidant, it wouldn't be impress them. It would be hold steady, don't push, don't chase, don't hurry, don't over-explain. They don't need you to analyze them. They need to see that when they return, you are still you, not anxious, not critical, not demanding promises. In the end, the most valuable thing you can offer isn't your emotion, it's your emotional space. A quiet, safe internal environment where they can simply exist, undefined, unpressured. In a world where everyone talks too much, the person who attracts the avoidant is the one who knows how to be quiet but deep. No pressure, no vanishing, just presence and groundedness. If you've ever tried to connect with an avoidant, you'll know this isn't an easy path. There are days when they feel close, like you're finally reaching them, and then the next day, they're gone, withdrawn without a trace. There are moments you believe you're special enough to touch something deep inside them, only to realize that being special isn't enough to make them stay. And at that moment, you have two choices. You can either try harder to hold on to them, or you can try softer and hold on to yourself. Because the only thing that can truly open the heart of an avoidant is pressureless presence. They don't need you to fully understand them. They just need you not to turn connection into a project, not to make them feel like they need to change in order for you to feel safe. Because that's exactly the feeling that made them shut down in the first place. If you can stay not chasing, not withdrawing, not controlling, then your steady presence becomes the safest invitation they've ever received. No tricks, no manipulation, just you living in your own truth, with clarity, stability, and zero need for someone else to validate your worth. And if they don't choose you, you still choose you. That's how you become magnetic, not by changing them, but by never losing yourself in the process of trying to connect. If this message touched something real in you, keep it close, not just as a way to understand avoidance, but as a mirror for how to love without abandoning yourself. And if you're ready to keep growing, to become a secure presence in love, follow along. There's more to come.